How was a woman able to board international flights again and again with no ticket in hand? The shocking truth was hidden until CCTV footage exposed it, but her case is just one of many. From UFOs to vanishing travelers to spectral figures roaming jet bridges, these are the strangest moments ever recorded on airport surveillance. The O'Hare UFO. On November 7, 2006, at 4:15 in the afternoon, a United Airlines ramp worker was pushing back a flight at Gate C-17 at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, the busiest airport in the world at the time, when he looked up and stopped moving. Hovering directly above him, just below the cloud ceiling, was a dark gray metallic disc. It made no sound and simply hung in the air above the gate. The worker immediately alerted the crew over United Airlines' internal frequency. Within minutes, pilots, mechanics, gate supervisors, and airline managers raced outside to stand in the cold and stare at it. In total, at least 12 United Airlines employees witnessed the object, and estimates of how many additional passengers and airport workers may have seen it from terminal windows run even higher. Every witness described the same thing: dark gray, saucer-shaped, 6 to 24 feet across, and completely silent. It held its position for roughly 5 minutes. Then it shot straight upward with such force that it punched a clean circular hole through the overcast cloud layer. One witness later described it as looking like somebody had punched a hole in the sky. Other witnesses reported that the circular clearing remained open for several minutes before slowly closing. Multiple employees left behind were described by colleagues as visibly shaken. What came next was arguably more disturbing than the object itself. Both United Airlines and the FAA immediately issued blanket denials. United's official position was that they had no information, and the FAA said the same. The story might have died there, except Chicago Tribune transportation reporter John Hilkovich refused to let it go. He filed a Freedom of Information Act request for the air traffic control recordings. When the tapes came back, they revealed that a United supervisor had called an FAA tower manager during the incident to ask whether the tower was aware of a disc flying over the terminal. An FAA inbound ground controller had even advised a nearby flight to use caution for the, quote, UFO. Caught, the FAA reversed course and admitted reports had been made. Their explanation, a weather phenomenon called a hole punch cloud, where aircraft passing through supercooled cloud layers can create a sudden circular clearing. The problem with that explanation is that the FAA simultaneously admitted the object never appeared on radar, which was the exact reason they said they wouldn't investigate. A NASA-led team from the National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena spent 5 months preparing a 154-page investigative report co-authored by Dr. Richard Haynes, which confirmed the presence of a physical object and stated that its maneuvers could not be explained by conventional means. The report explicitly called the FAA's dismissal inadequate. Witnesses who had reported the event were described as upset that federal officials declined to investigate what multiple trained aviation professionals had directly observed above an active gate at one of the world's busiest airports. But that was in the sky. What happened next was caught on live national television, and millions of people still don't believe the explanation. The vanishing blonde. In March 2016, Danish broadcaster TV2 Sport was filming a short arrival interview at Copenhagen Airport with national women's handball coach Klavs Bruun Jorgensen. But in the background of the shot, standing near a baggage carousel, was a woman in a blue coat, blonde, relaxed, chatting with a friend who was pushing a luggage trolley. Then, in the gap between two frames, she was simply gone. The clip went viral within hours and racked up more than 1.4 million views on YouTube and over 3 million on Imgur within a single day. Comment sections were immediately split between the rationale and the spectacular. The Matrix is glitching, alien abduction, and proof of teleportation. Danish media picked it up, and then international media picked it up from them. The woman turned out to be Trine Skovgaard Nielsen, a former Olympic champion who had won gold with the Danish women's handball team at the 2004 Athens Games and had since moved into sports broadcasting with TV2. She was not a random bystander. She was a recognizable figure in Danish sports media, which made the story even more widely shared. 2 days after the clip exploded, Nielsen addressed it directly. Her explanation: She had realized mid-shot that she was standing in the background of a live broadcast and wanted to leave without disrupting the interview. She stepped sideways at the precise moment the camera's shutter was cycling between frames, meaning the camera physically did not capture her exit. As a former elite-level athlete with exceptional spatial awareness and coordination, she moved quickly enough and smoothly enough that the transition happened in a gap the lens couldn't fill. She told TV2, "My own belief is that I'm lightning fast like a ninja, but the real explanation is probably more that I was lucky. The timing was, by any measure, extraordinary." Science wrapped that one up in 48 hours. The next story has been open for over a decade, and the footage has been watched 16 million times. The most famous missing person on YouTube. On June 30, 2014, Lars Mitank, a 28-year-old electrician from Marne in northern Germany, flew to the Golden Sands Resort near Varna, Bulgaria, with 4 close friends for a week-long summer holiday. By every account, Lars was completely ordinary. He supported Werder Bremen, had a long-term girlfriend, and worked at Germany's only deep-water naval port at Wilhelmshaven. Nothing in his background pointed toward what was about to happen. The first 5 days passed without incident. Then, on the evening of July 5, Lars got into a verbal argument with a group of German tourists supporting Bayern Munich, which turned physical. Lars didn't come back to the hotel that night. When he appeared the following morning, he told his friends that the rival group had paid men to beat him. He had a damaged jaw and a ruptured eardrum to prove it. A local doctor told him directly that flying home was out of the question. A change in pressure in a pressurized cabin could cause permanent hearing damage. The doctor prescribed him an antibiotic called cefprozil and told him to wait. His friends asked to stay behind with him, but Lars refused and sent them home. They flew back to Germany on July 7. Lars checked into Hotel Color Varna near the airport, alone in a foreign country, and planned to follow in a few days. Within 24 hours, his behavior had changed completely. That night, he called his mother Sandra in Germany, speaking in a whisper. He told her that people were trying to kill him and asked her to cancel his credit cards immediately. Hotel security cameras recorded him pacing the hallways, peering out of windows and ducking into lifts. Around 1 in the morning, he left the hotel. He returned approximately 1 hour later. Where he went during that hour has never been established. On the morning of July 8, Lars texted his mother to say he was at Varna Airport to see the airport physician and get cleared to fly home. The doctor, Dr. Kostakostov, later said Lars was nervous and difficult to read but was medically fit to travel. Then a construction worker entered the room. The moment Lars registered the man's presence, he began to shake visibly. Without saying a word, he stood up, dropped his bag, and ran. Airport cameras picked him up immediately and tracked him through the building, sprinting at full speed in a bright yellow t-shirt past check-in desks, departure gates, and terminal staff. He hit the exit doors and crossed the car park without slowing. He scaled a 2-meter barbed wire perimeter fence, landed on the other side, and ran into a sunflower field. Beyond the field was a forest. Lars ran into it and has never been seen again. In the immediate aftermath, Bulgarian authorities conducted a limited search of the surrounding area, but never mounted a full ground operation. Germany's Federal Criminal Police Office, the BKA, became involved, and the case has remained open ever since. In 2016, Brazilian police shared a photograph of a bearded, barefoot man walking along a highway whose features matched an age-progressed image of Lars. He turned out to be a missing Canadian aid worker. A German truck driver later reported giving a hitchhiker a lift near Dresden, who resembled an older Lars. That sighting also went nowhere. Theories have multiplied over the past decade. The most widely discussed is an acute psychotic break triggered by extreme stress, sleep deprivation, isolation, and possibly the antibiotic cefprozil, which has, in rare documented cases, caused psychiatric side effects. Others point to Bulgaria's history of organized crime and suggest Lars may have been genuinely targeted. His mother, Sandra, continues to post missing person notices and refuses to believe he is dead. As of 2025, Lars would be in his late 30s, but his whereabouts remain completely unknown. 16 million people have watched that footage of him fleeing Varna Airport, making him the most watched missing person in YouTube history. But the next person the cameras caught wasn't trying to escape. She was trying to get on a plane, and airport security had absolutely no answer for her. Svetlana Dali, the stowaway. In late November 2024, a 57-year-old Russian national named Svetlana Dali boarded an international Delta Airlines flight at JFK Airport. She had no boarding pass, no valid travel documents, and according to prosecutors, had not left the United States at all in the 5 years prior. When federal agents later asked how she did it, her answer was 4 words: "I just walked on." Svetlana first approached a standard TSA checkpoint at Terminal 4 and was turned away immediately for not having a boarding pass. She didn't leave the airport. Instead, she found a different security lane, one designated exclusively for airline crew. She quietly slipped into a large Air Europa flight crew being processed and walked through alongside them. Once inside the secured zone, she navigated to the gate for Delta Flight 264, bound for Paris, Charles de Gaulle. While gate agents were occupied boarding passengers on the fully loaded aircraft, she slipped through unnoticed. For the next 8 hours over the Atlantic, Svetlana remained locked in a lavatory. When flight attendants knocked, she told them she was vomiting and couldn't return to her seat. Before landing, when the crew pressed harder for compliance, she gave 2 different fake names to 2 different staff members. It was only after the plane touched down in Paris that Delta personnel confirmed she had no record on the flight at all. French authorities detained her on arrival. Svetlana immediately applied for asylum in France, claiming both the US and Russian governments were attempting to poison her with the radioactive element polonium. The application was denied. She was flown back to New York on December 4 and charged federally. Investigators then discovered this was not her first attempt. Exactly 48 hours before the Paris flight on November 24, Svetlana had breached security at Bradley International Airport in Hartford, Connecticut, using the same tactic of blending into a group of passengers. She had not successfully boarded a plane that day, but the attempt was clearly a rehearsal. And in February 2024, 9 months before the Paris flight, U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents had found her hiding in a secure international arrivals bathroom at Miami International Airport. She claimed she had just arrived on an Air France flight. There was no record of her on any flight that day. Agents escorted her out and let her go. Released on bail in December 2024, Svetlana cut off her ankle monitor within days. She boarded a Greyhound bus toward Buffalo with the apparent intention of crossing into Canada at the Peace Bridge. Her roommate found the discarded monitor and called the police. She was arrested in Niagara County and returned to federal custody. In May 2025, a Brooklyn jury convicted her in under an hour. Judge Ann Donnelly sentenced her to time already served plus 1 year of supervised release, conditional on a mental health evaluation. She walked out of court, and on February 25, 2026, while still on supervised release, which legally prohibited her from leaving her judicial district without permission, security cameras at Newark Liberty International Airport recorded her at 5:30 in the afternoon bypassing the ticket counter and boarding United Airlines Flight 19, a Boeing 777-200 bound for Milan Malpensa. The crew didn't realize she was aboard without a ticket until the aircraft was already over the Atlantic Ocean. When crew members questioned her, she pretended she couldn't hear them. Italian police arrested her on the tarmac in Milan the following morning at 7 o'clock. As of the time of this video, the FBI, TSA, and Port Authority of New York and New Jersey are conducting an open investigation into how a woman with a known federal conviction for the same offense managed to board an international flight undetected again from a different airport. No answer has been made public. She slipped through 6 security breaches across 4 airports. Now here's a story where security caught a breach on camera and still couldn't stop it in time. The runaway strike. At 11:19 p.m. on Friday, May 8, 2026, Frontier Airlines Flight 4345, an Airbus A321 carrying 224 passengers and a crew of 231 people in total, was accelerating down runway 17 left at Denver International Airport, bound for Los Angeles. As the aircraft reached takeoff speed, a figure appeared in the darkness at the edge of the runway lights. A man had scaled a 2.4-meter chain-link perimeter fence and was walking 650 feet across open ground toward the active runway. Airport ground detection sensors had triggered an alarm as he approached the fence. Still, A security operator monitoring the cameras spotted a herd of deer moving in the same area and dismissed the alert. He was inside the perimeter for approximately 2 minutes before the aircraft reached him. The force of the impact was so catastrophic that it was instantly fatal, with the right engine of the Airbus nearly consuming the man's body. The A321 was traveling at around 240 kilometers per hour when it struck him. The impact was instantaneous. The pilot aborted the takeoff, and as the plane decelerated violently, smoke began to fill the cabin. Passengers screamed in terror, and within minutes the crew deployed the emergency evacuation slides, and all 231 people were off the aircraft and onto the dark runway in the cold night air. 12 passengers sustained minor injuries in the evacuation. 5 were taken to the hospital. A 4,000-foot debris field was left across the runway. Over the radio, the pilot reported what he had seen with clinical and haunted precision. An individual was walking across the runway. I do have limbs on the runway. I believe the aircraft struck an individual. There appear to be human remains on the runway. Released airport security footage, filmed by a thermal imaging camera, shows a small black and white figure approaching the runway at a walking pace, arms swinging normally, before the aircraft appears and the impact occurs in a fraction of a second. The Denver Medical Examiner identified the man as Michael Mott and ruled the manner of death a suicide. A note was not found at the scene. No vehicle, bicycle, or any of Mott's belongings were found anywhere near the airport, and investigators have not established how he traveled to such a remote section of the airfield perimeter. His criminal record included charges of burglary, criminal trespassing, criminal mischief, and escaping from a detention facility. Denver International Airport CEO Phil Washington confirmed that the perimeter fence in the area of the breach was found completely intact afterwards, meaning the fence did not fail. Mott had climbed it. In the aftermath, airport officials acknowledged that perimeter security across the 53-square-mile airport campus, surrounded by 36 miles of fencing, is monitored by sensors and cameras that still rely on human operators to make the right call in real time. One man walked across a runway and was gone in 15 seconds. But the next piece of footage was captured by a dash cam in a parking lot, and what it shows is almost impossible to watch. The UPS crash fireball. At 5:14 in the afternoon on November 4, 2025, a truck driver was sitting in a vehicle in a parking lot near Louisville Muhammad Ali International Airport, scrolling through his phone on what appeared to be a quiet Tuesday evening. His dashcam was running, and 30 seconds later it captured one of the deadliest aviation disasters in Kentucky history. UPS Flight 2976 was a McDonnell Douglas MD-11F cargo aircraft, a 34-year-old 3-engine jet, operating a domestic cargo flight from Louisville to Honolulu, Hawaii, with 3 crew members on board and more than 38,000 gallons of jet fuel. The plane received takeoff clearance at 5:11 in the afternoon and began its roll down runway 17 right. What the crew could not have known was that the bearing holding the left engine to its pylon mount had been developing fatigue cracks, almost certainly for years. As the aircraft reached rotation speed, the bearing race fractured. The left engine and its entire pylon assembly tore away from the wing. Airport surveillance video released by the NTSB shows the engine ripping off and briefly flying several feet above the plane before landing on the runway behind it. The aircraft, now critically asymmetric and on fire, staggered into the air but never climbed above 30 feet. Instead, it cleared the blast fence at the end of the runway. Its left main landing gear clipped the roof of a UPS Supply Chain Solutions warehouse at the southern edge of the airport, and it slammed into an industrial area several hundred feet from where the truck driver was parked. The fireball stretched a full city block. Witnesses across Louisville described the sky going black. All 3 crew members were killed: Captain Richard Wartenberg, 57, First Officer Lee Truitt, 45, and International Relief Officer Captain Dana Diamond, 62. 12 people on the ground died as well, with 23 others injured. One of the 12 ground fatalities died in the hospital on December 25th, 51 days after the crash. The NTSB investigation, which included a 2-day public hearing in Washington in May 2026, found that the fracture of the bearing mount was a known structural vulnerability. Boeing had received 9 separate reports of bearing race problems across the MD-11 and DC-10 fleets before the crash. In each case, Boeing had analyzed the reports and determined that no action was required. The pylon's aft mount inspection had last been conducted in October 2021, 4 years before the crash. Following the accident, the FAA issued an emergency airworthiness directive, and UPS grounded its entire MD-11 and MD-10 fleet for inspection. Investigators explicitly compared the Louisville crash to the 1979 American Airlines Flight 191 disaster in Chicago, in which a DC-10 lost its left engine and pylon on takeoff, killing 273 people, the deadliest aviation accident in U.S. history at the time. That fire was visible for miles. The next story involves something that people could barely see at all, and it terrified an entire airport workforce for months. The White Sari Ghost. Bengaluru International Airport opened in May 2008 as a showcase of modern India, a sleek, internationally funded facility designed to announce the country's arrival in the global aviation era. It was a joint venture between Siemens Project Ventures and Unique Zurich Airport, built from scratch on 4,000 acres northeast of the city. It had been open for less than 4 months when the rumors started. In the third week of September 2008, a cargo employee working for Kingfisher Airlines reported that a pilot of an unspecified international carrier, on final approach to the airport, saw a woman standing in the middle of the active runway. She was dressed in a white sari, arms outstretched, hair loose in the wind. The pilot aborted his landing and circled for a second approach. She was still there, so he aborted again. On his third attempt, the figure was gone, and he touched down with shaking hands. That account spread through the airport immediately. More reports followed, and they were maddeningly inconsistent, as genuine mass fear accounts almost always are. Some workers described a woman in a white sari near the cargo bays. Others said they had seen a headless figure near the escalators inside the terminal building. Others reported something near the parking bays that they could not clearly describe, other than that it was not human. A photograph was rumored to exist, allegedly captured on an infrared camera by an anonymous staff member, passed between mobile phones via Bluetooth and reportedly posted to YouTube. Nobody ever publicly produced the image, and no original footage has ever been verified. The fear became so palpable that staff at the Central Industrial Security Force, the armed guards responsible for airport security, were reportedly terrified to patrol the extreme ends of the runway after dark. Some employees were reportedly so afraid that they declined night shifts altogether, fearing for their lives. According to later reports, airport authorities deployed infrared detection equipment to scan the areas where the apparitions had been seen. Experts operating the devices allegedly detected negative energy in those zones, though precisely what that meant was never clarified. The Bangalore Mirror published a report on September 30th, noting that some employees were specifically waiting for the next Amavasya, the moonless night in the Hindu lunar calendar, traditionally considered the period when spirits are most active, expecting the figure to reappear. Airport management and air traffic control both issued flat public denials. That story has been building for 16 years without a resolution. The next one is only 2 years old, and it still doesn't have one either. The high-speed disc. At 9:46 in the morning on December 1, 2023, a surveillance camera at Mexico City's Benito Juarez International Airport was streaming live to the public internet via the Webcams de Mexico network. This account monitors volcanoes, airports, and public infrastructure across Mexico in real time. A stationary passenger aircraft was sitting on the runway in clear morning light. Then something crossed the frame. It appeared from the left side of the shot, moved in a smooth horizontal trajectory behind the aircraft, and vanished off the right edge. The entire passage took less than 1 second. The object was dark, roughly oval in shape, and its path clearly passed behind the parked aircraft rather than in front of it, which ruled out the most immediate explanation of an insect flying close to the camera lens. When the footage was slowed down frame by frame, the object appeared consistent and solid throughout its trajectory, with no wing movement, no erratic deviations, and no visual blur associated with insects near a camera. The clip was shared by Webcams de Mexico on X and reached 177,000 views within hours. Commenters immediately divided between those identifying it as a fly or bird near the lens, and those insisting it was a disc-shaped craft of non-conventional origin. ABC Noticias reported that, when slowed down, the footage revealed a dark, possibly oval-shaped object moving with unusual precision and consistency. Mexico City has a documented history of significant UAP activity. In April 2004, the Mexican Air Force released classified infrared footage taken by a military surveillance aircraft showing 11 unidentified objects performing coordinated maneuvers around the plane, one of the most credible institutional UAP disclosures ever made public by any government. The webcams de Mexico network had also previously recorded unexplained luminous phenomena emerging from the crater of the Popocatépetl volcano on multiple occasions. For the December 2023 airport footage, Mexican aviation authorities issued no official statement. Jaime Maussan, Mexico's most prominent UFO researcher, who had presented alleged alien bodies to the Mexican Congress just 3 months earlier in September 2023, made no public comment on the clip. The object appeared for less than a second at one of the most heavily monitored airports in Latin America, leaving behind nothing except a few frames of digital footage and an unresolved argument. The ghost passengers. It was a night shift somewhere in Southeast Asia, Bangkok Airways. Captain Vorovit Vejajiva was parked on the tarmac when he glanced over at the adjacent gate and felt his stomach drop. The jet bridge at that gate was lit up, fully extended and attached to nothing. No aircraft was connected to it. And yet moving steadily down the gangway was a procession of shadowy figures. Some were dragging luggage and all were walking with deliberate, unhurried purpose, as if stepping off a flight that didn't exist. The captain grabbed his phone and filmed it. On July 25, 2017, the video was posted to Facebook with a brief caption citing flight PG-873. It spread to millions of views within hours. Comment sections were immediate and unanimous. The figures were ghosts. Online investigators went further. They traced the footage to Phuket International Airport and connected it to 12Go Airlines Flight 269, an MD-82 that had crashed there on September 16, 2007. The aircraft attempted a go-around in heavy rain and struck an embankment beside runway 27 before bursting into flames. Of the 130 people on board, 90 died, making it the third deadliest aviation disaster in Thai history. The viral theory held that the figures in the video were the restless dead, still going through the motions of disembarking a decade after the crash. Then the pilot who filmed it stepped forward. Captain Vejajiva explained that the footage had not even been taken at Phuket Airport. What the camera captured was a reflection. After parking his own aircraft, he had noticed that passengers walking through his brightly lit jet bridge were being perfectly mirrored onto the dark glass surface of the empty bridge positioned directly across from him. From his cockpit angle and in those lighting conditions, the reflection looked exactly like figures moving through a detached gangway with no plane attached. He released a daylight photograph of the airport layout showing exactly how the geometry worked. It made no difference. The video resurfaced for Halloween 2024. It resurfaced again in August 2025. Each time it collected millions of fresh views and the same terrified reactions, as if the debunking had never happened. The ghost story has now survived its own explanation by 8 years and shows no sign of stopping, which might be the most genuinely unsettling thing about it. Not what the footage shows, but what it reveals about how badly people want the story to be true. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.